Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet grow larger on the main screen. Earth looked peaceful from this distance. White clouds swirled over green and brown land masses. Oceans sparkled under the light of a single yellow star. It seemed like any other world the hegemony had conquered in the past 300 years. The intelligence reports had been clear. The humans were a young species, barely 200,000 years old. They had only achieved spaceflight 50 years ago. Their longest journey had taken them to their own moon. They still used chemical rockets and primitive computers. Most importantly, they were divided into nearly 200 separate nations, constantly fighting each other over resources and territory. Zethkar had conquered 47 worlds during his military career. Each time, the pattern was the same. His fleet would arrive, demonstrate superior firepower, and the local government would surrender within days. Sometimes there would be brief resistance, but it never lasted long. Advanced weapons and shield technology made the outcome inevitable. The Third Fleet consisted of 12 dreadnoughts, 30 cruisers, and over 100 smaller vessels. Each ship carried weapons that could level cities and shields that could deflect nuclear missiles. The humans had nothing that could threaten even his smallest patrol craft. This would be another easy conquest. Captain Vexran, his tactical officer, approached with the latest sensor readings. The four-armed reptilian creature's scales glowed slightly with excitement. Fresh conquests always energized the younger officers. "Commander, we have detected several human vessels near their moon," Vexran reported. "Small craft, likely military patrol ships. Should we destroy them immediately?" Zethkar considered the question. Standard procedure was to eliminate any potential resistance before beginning planetary bombardment. But these human ships were so primitive, they barely registered on his sensors. Their weapons could not penetrate hegemony shields, and their engines were too slow to escape. Send a squadron of scouts to investigate, he decided. We should gather intelligence about their military capabilities before the main assault. Have Commander Krelthan lead the mission. 3 hegemony scout ships broke away from the main fleet and accelerated toward the human vessels. Each scout ship was larger than the biggest human craft, with superior weapons and defenses. The encounter should have been over in minutes. Aboard the human patrol vessel UES Liberty, Captain Jake Morrison watched the alien ships approach on his tactical display. He had been in space for 15 years, starting as a young lieutenant fresh from the academy. He had seen combat during the Mars colony uprising and the asteroid mining disputes. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. "How many of them?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Walsh, his second in command. Her voice was steady, but Jake could see the tension in her shoulders. 3 ships, each twice our size, Jake replied. They're moving fast, but not at full acceleration. They might be trying to capture us rather than destroy us. The Liberty was one of Earth's newest patrol vessels, but it was still primitive compared to what they faced. Nuclear-powered engines, kinetic weapons, and basic missile systems. The ship's computer estimated their chances of survival at less than 5%. "Should we run, Captain?" asked Ensign Tony Martinez from the navigation station. "We could try to reach the asteroid belt, maybe hide among the rocks." Jake looked around his bridge. 12 crew members, all volunteers who had signed up to protect Earth and its colonies. They had families waiting for them, dreams of peaceful futures, hopes that humanity would one day join the community of spacefaring species as equals rather than as conquerors. "No," he said finally. "We run, and these aliens learn nothing about human determination. We run, and Earth gets no warning about what's coming. We stay and fight." The alien scout ships opened communications on a wide frequency. The translation came through clearly, spoken in accented but understandable English. "Human vessel, this is Commander Krelthan of the Hegemony Third Fleet. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Resistance is futile. Your weapons cannot harm our ships, and your engines cannot outrun ours. Jake activated the ship's communication system. He knew his words would be recorded, transmitted back to the alien fleet, and possibly broadcast across their empire. What he said next might be the first impression humanity made on the galaxy. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth. Ship Liberty, you are in violation of our space. Turn around and leave, or we will defend ourselves. Laughter came through the communication channel. Not cruel laughter, but the kind reserved for children who threaten adults with toy weapons. Captain Morrison, your ship mounts 6 kinetic cannons and a dozen nuclear missiles. Our scouts carry plasma weapons and particle beams. Your shields are electromagnetic barriers designed to deflect debris. Ours can withstand direct hits from stellar fusion. You cannot win this fight. Jake looked at his crew. Lieutenant Walsh nodded slightly. Ensign Martinez gripped his console tighter. The others waited for his decision. Maybe we can't win, Jake said into the communicator. But we can make you pay for every meter of space you take. And while you're fighting us, Earth is preparing to welcome you properly. What happened next surprised Commander Krelthon more than anything in his 50 years of military service. Instead of surrendering or trying to flee, the human ship charged directly at his flagship. Its engines glowed brighter as the crew pushed them beyond safe limits. Nuclear missiles launched from its tubes, followed by a stream of kinetic projectiles. Moving at significant fractions of light speed, the hegemony weapons easily destroyed the incoming missiles and deflected the kinetic rounds. But the human ship kept coming, its captain apparently intending to ram the much larger scout vessel. At the last moment, Jake Morrison activated his ship's self-destruct sequence. The Liberty's fusion reactor overloaded in a brilliant flash that lit up the space around Luna. The explosion was not powerful enough to destroy Krelthon's ship, but it damaged the shields and left scorch marks on the hull. More importantly, it sent a clear message to both the hegemony fleet and Earth itself. Humanity would not surrender quietly. As the debris from the Liberty drifted past his damaged scout ship, Commander Krelthon sent his report to the fleet commander. The humans were more aggressive than anticipated. They seemed willing to die rather than accept defeat. This might complicate the conquest scheduled back on Earth. The Liberty's final transmission had been received by military installations around the globe. Captain Morrison's last words echoed in command centers from Colorado to Beijing. Unknown alien fleet approaching Earth. Estimated arrival 6 hours. They want us to surrender. We told them what humans do to invaders. Within minutes, every nuclear weapon on the planet was being prepared for space deployment. Civilian spacecraft were being converted to military use. Mining colonies in the asteroid belt received orders to begin guerrilla warfare preparations. The leaders of Earth's fractured nations put aside centuries of rivalry to face a common threat. Did not know if they could win. They did not know if any of them would survive. But they knew one thing with absolute certainty. Humanity would make the aliens pay for every world they tried to conquer. Starting with Earth itself, Commander Zethkar received Krelthon's report with growing concern. In 3 centuries of conquest, he had never encountered a species that chose death over surrender in the very first contact. The humans had lost their only ship in the engagement, achieved no military objective, and gained nothing except a few minutes of warning time for their homeworld. Yet somehow, this felt like the beginning of something far more dangerous than a simple conquest. The humans had introduced an element that did not exist in hegemony tactical manuals: the willingness to die for principles rather than survival. The invasion of Earth would proceed as planned. But for the first time in his long career, Zethkar found himself wondering if the hegemony had chosen the wrong enemy. Commander Zethkar expected the orbital bombardment of Earth to break human resistance within hours. The hegemony had perfected this strategy across dozens of worlds. Destroy the major cities, eliminate the government centers, and the population would surrender to save the survivors. The first target was New York City. 12 plasma beams struck the metropolitan area simultaneously, turning skyscrapers into molten metal and concrete into glass. The energy release was equivalent to several nuclear weapons, creating a crater where 8 million humans had lived just moments before. London followed 20 minutes later. Then Tokyo, Beijing, Moscow, and Los Angeles. Each strike was precisely calculated to maximize psychological impact while preserving industrial infrastructure. The humans would need those factories to serve their new masters efficiently. But something unexpected happened after each bombardment. Instead of silence, instead of surrender broadcasts, the communication channels filled with more human voices. Emergency networks activated across the planet. Military commanders who should have been vaporized were somehow still coordinating resistance from underground bunkers. "Sir, we are receiving multiple transmissions from the planet's surface," reported Captain Vex Ran, his scaled face showing confusion. "The humans are broadcasting tactical data, not surrender terms." Zethkar studied the communication intercepts. Most species sent desperate pleas for mercy after the first demonstration of hegemony firepower. These humans were doing something entirely different. They were sharing information about his fleet's positions, weapon capabilities, and attack patterns. Every destroyed city became a source of intelligence that helped the survivors prepare for the next assault. From the ruins of what had been London, a transmission center continued broadcasting. The facility should have been destroyed in the bombardment, but the humans had built there critical infrastructure deeper underground than hegemony intelligence had estimated. A calm female voice provided updates every few minutes. Alien fleet. Maintaining orbital position at 42,000 kilometers. Plasma weapons require a 30-second recharge cycle between major strikes. Shield harmonics suggest vulnerability to coordinated nuclear detonation. All remaining forces should note that ramming attacks cause visible damage to enemy hull plating. The voice belonged to Colonel Linda Foster, a career military officer who had been stationed in London's deep command bunker when the city died above her. She had lost her home, her friends, and most of her unit in the bombardment. But instead of grieving, she was analyzing the attack patterns and sharing her findings with anyone who could still fight. Zethkar had never encountered anything like this. Civilized species mourned their losses before accepting defeat. These humans seemed to treat every casualty as a source of tactical information for the next engagement. The situation became even more troubling when human forces in the outer solar system began their counterattack. The Luna mining colonies, which should have been easy targets for cleanup operations, had transformed themselves into military bases with shocking speed. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Rodriguez commanded the Luna Defense Force from the main mining station. She had served in the Earth military for 20 years before taking a civilian job managing asteroid mining operations. When the invasion began, she found herself in command of 300 miners, engineers, and support staff who had never expected to become soldiers. "The alien ships are too fast and too well armed for conventional attacks," she told her makeshift army during their first strategy meeting. "But they don't understand human mining operations. We're going to turn this entire system into the biggest minefield in history." Amy's plan was simple but effective. The mining colonies possessed thousands of fusion charges designed to break apart asteroids. They also had cargo haulers capable of carrying heavy loads across vast distances. Most importantly, they had detailed knowledge of every rock, ice chunk, and debris field in the outer system. The first hegemony patrol to investigate the asteroid belt encountered what appeared to be routine mining activity. Cargo ships moved slowly between asteroids. Industrial equipment operated on distant rocks, and communication traffic seemed normal for a colonial operation. Commander Krelthon Still angry about the damage to his scout ship, led the patrol himself. His orders were to secure the mining facilities and capture any humans for interrogation. The operation should have been completed within hours. The trap was sprung when his squadron entered the main asteroid field. What had appeared to be standard mining equipment suddenly revealed its true nature. Cargo haulers released hundreds of fusion charges that had been disguised as ordinary supply containers. Industrial mining drones, reprogrammed for combat, swarmed toward the hegemony ships like angry insects. Evasive maneuvers, Krelthan ordered as the first explosions bloomed around his flagship. How did they manage to hide so many weapons? The answer came from Amy Rodriguez herself, broadcasting on all frequencies as her improvised fleet attacked. You're not fighting an army, you're fighting a way of life. Every tool we use to survive in space can be turned into a weapon. Every mining charge can become a mine. Every cargo hauler can become a missile. Every worker can become a soldier. Krelthan's squadron managed to destroy most of the mining drones and avoid the worst of the fusion charges, but they lost two escort vessels and suffered significant damage to their shields. More importantly, the humans had proven they could threaten hegemony ships with nothing but converted civilian equipment. The psychological impact was even greater than the material damage. For the first time in living memory, a hegemony patrol had been forced to retreat by inferior technology operated by untrained civilians. The news spread quickly through the fleet, causing the first stirrings of doubt among crews who had never questioned their technological superiority. On Earth itself, the resistance was taking a form that confused hegemony tactical analysts. Most conquered species organized their military resistance around surviving government structures and remaining professional soldiers. The humans were doing something completely different. In the ruins of Chicago, an automotive factory worker named Lisa Harper was organizing neighborhood defense groups. She had no military training beyond basic civil defense courses, but she understood how to organize people and how to build things with limited resources. The aliens expect us to fight like a regular army, she explained to a group of survivors, hiding in the city's subway tunnels. They have better weapons, better armor, better everything. But they don't understand how normal people fight when their families are threatened. Lisa's network spread through the destroyed city like a spider web. Factory workers who knew chemistry began producing improvised explosives from cleaning supplies and fertilizer. Office workers who understood logistics coordinated supply lines. Through the rubble, teachers who could explain complex ideas trained others in sabotage techniques and guerrilla tactics. The hegemony ground forces that landed to secure Chicago found themselves fighting an entire population rather than an organized military unit. Every building could hide snipers, every basement could contain a bomb factory, and every civilian could be gathering intelligence for the resistance. Captain Morden of the Hegemony Marines had conquered urban areas on 17 different worlds. He thought he understood how to pacify a hostile population. But Chicago was unlike anything in his experience. "Sir, we have secured the industrial district," reported one of his lieutenants. "But we found no intact equipment. The humans destroyed everything before retreating." This was another shock. Most species tried to preserve their infrastructure, hoping to negotiate better terms by demonstrating their usefulness. The humans seemed determined to deny their conquerors any benefit from the invasion. "They burned their own factories," Morden reported to Fleet Command. "They destroyed their own power plants. They even collapsed the tunnels that carried water to the surviving population. These humans would rather die than serve us." Similar reports came from landing sites around the globe. Human resistance fighters were not trying to preserve their civilization. They were systematically destroying anything that might be useful to the occupying forces, while making every meter of territory as costly as possible to hold. The most disturbing reports came from rural areas where hegemony forces encountered Individual humans who refused to surrender even when completely surrounded. A farmer named Pete Johnson had turned his property into a fortress, using his knowledge of the local terrain and his agricultural equipment to fight a running battle. With an entire hegemony company, Pete knew every hill, every stream, and every cave on his land. He used his farm equipment as weapons, turning combines into armored vehicles and irrigation systems into delivery methods for homemade explosives. When the aliens finally cornered him in his barn, he triggered a massive fertilizer bomb that took out half their unit. His final message, broadcast on a jury-rigged radio, became another rallying cry for the resistance. This is my land. My family lived here for 6 generations. You want it, you can have it. But you'll get it one handful of dirt at a time, and every handful will cost you blood. By the end of the first week, Zethkar realized that the conquest of Earth would not follow the normal pattern. 3 months into the occupation of Earth, Commander Zethkar realized that controlling the planet was impossible. His forces held the major cities during the day, but at night, the humans emerged from hidden bunkers and tunnel systems to strike. At supply lines, communication centers, and isolated patrols, the resistance had evolved beyond anything in military records. Instead of a centralized command structure that could be targeted and destroyed, the humans had created thousands of small, independent cells that operated without direct coordination. Each group knew only its immediate neighbors, making it nearly impossible to uncover the full network even when prisoners were captured. Captain Morden submitted his weekly report from the Chicago occupation zone with growing frustration. His Marine unit had been reduced to half strength through constant harassment attacks. Every patrol lost soldiers to snipers hiding in rubble. Every supply convoy required heavy escort just to move basic materials across the city. The humans have turned the entire urban area into a weapon, he wrote. Every pile of debris conceals a firing position. Every basement contains weapon caches or bomb factories. The civilian population provides intelligence, supplies, and new recruits for the resistance fighters. We cannot distinguish between combatants and non-combatants because every human is potentially both. The situation was worse in rural areas where the terrain favored guerrilla tactics. Sergeant Lisa Harper had escaped from Chicago after the initial bombardment and made her way to the countryside. Her factory worker background had taught her how to organize production lines, and she applied those skills to resistance operations. Working with local farmers and hunters, Lisa established a network of safe houses and supply caches that stretched across 3 states. The humans used their knowledge of the local landscape to move unseen between positions, striking at hegemony forces and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. They know this planet in ways we cannot understand, reported Colonel Vashtar. After losing another patrol to human ambush, they can predict weather patterns, navigate by star positions, and find food and shelter in areas our sensors read as uninhabitable. Every human is a walking database of survival information accumulated over millions of years of evolution on this world. The most effective resistance leader was a former park ranger named Pete Johnson who had survived the destruction of his farm. Using his understanding of wilderness survival and animal behavior, Pete turned the forest regions into deadly traps for alien patrols. His fighters moved through the woods like ghosts, using animal trails and natural camouflage to avoid detection. They set traps that used gravity and leverage to trigger massive deadfalls. They diverted streams to flood alien campsites. They even trained local wildlife to flee at the approach of hegemony vehicles, creating an early warning system that covered hundreds of square kilometers. Pete's tactics were simple, but devastatingly effective. A fallen tree across a forest road would force an alien convoy to stop. While the soldiers cleared the obstacle, human snipers would pick off stragglers from concealed positions. By the time the aliens organized a response, the attackers had melted back into the wilderness. "We don't fight fair because fair fights are for sports," Pete explained in one of his radio broadcasts to other resistance groups. "The aliens have better weapons, better armor, and better technology. But this is our world. We know every rock and tree. We know which way the wind blows and where the rain collects. We know how to live off the land while they need supply convoys. Just to survive." The space-based resistance was equally troublesome for hegemony forces. Captain Maria Santos had commanded a civilian cargo hauler before the invasion. When her ship was commandeered for military use, she found herself leading a small fleet of converted vessels operating from hidden bases in the asteroid belt. Maria's raiders specialized in hit-and-run attacks on hegemony supply lines. Her ships were too small and too fast for the alien military vessels to catch, and she knew the locations of every asteroid, comet, and debris field in the outer system. Her crews could navigate through cosmic hazards that would destroy larger ships. The converted cargo haulers carried missile racks built from mining equipment and armor plating salvaged from destroyed alien vessels. They were not powerful enough to face hegemony warships in direct combat, but they could disable supply freighters and escape before military escorts arrived. "Every ton of supplies we destroy is food and ammunition that never reaches their ground forces," Maria explained to her crews before each raid. "Every convoy we hit means their soldiers on Earth go hungry for another day. We might not be able to win this war in space, but we can make sure the aliens lose it on the ground." The psychological warfare was as effective as the physical attacks. The humans had learned to exploit hegemony communication systems, broadcasting messages that reached alien forces throughout the solar system. Former broadcast journalist Helen Brooks coordinated these efforts from a hidden base in Antarctica. Helen's team produced propaganda that targeted the fears and doubts of individual alien species within the hegemony military. They broadcast testimonies from captured prisoners who spoke about human determination and fighting spirit. They shared tactical analyses that highlighted every hegemony defeat and human victory. "Your commanders tell you that resistance is futile," Helen's voice would say during scheduled broadcasts. "But you have been fighting for 6 months and still do not control a single human city. You have lost more ships in this system than in your last 10 conquests combined. How long before your superiors decide that you are the problem?" The broadcasts were carefully designed to erode morale and create doubt about the mission's ultimate success. Many alien soldiers began to question whether Earth was worth the casualties they were suffering. Some even began to wonder if their own commanders were telling them the truth about human capabilities. The most damaging aspect of human resistance was their ability to learn and adapt. Every failed attack became a lesson that improved the next operation. Every captured piece of alien technology was studied, reverse-engineered, and turned against its former owners. That Dr. Kevin Walsh had been a physics professor at a small college before the invasion. When his university was destroyed in the initial bombardment, he joined the resistance and applied his knowledge to understanding hegemony technology. Working with salvaged equipment and improvised laboratories, his team began to unlock the secrets of alien weapons and defenses. Their plasma weapons work on the same principles as our fusion reactors, Kevin explained to a group of resistance engineers. "We can build crude versions using salvaged components. More importantly, we can create countermeasures that disrupt their energy flow and cause weapon malfunctions." The breakthrough came when Kevin's team successfully reverse-engineered a hegemony shield generator. Within weeks, human resistance fighters were deploying energy barriers that could deflect alien weapons fire. The shields were crude and unreliable compared to the originals, but they gave human fighters a chance to survive direct confrontations with alien forces. The aliens were not just fighting human weapons and tactics. They were fighting human psychology. The resistance fighters displayed a complete disregard for their own safety that made conventional military calculations meaningless. Humans would sacrifice themselves to achieve objectives that offered no strategic value except to deny the enemy. A psychological victory. Staff Sergeant Rick Cole exemplified this mindset during the defense of the Denver underground complex. When hegemony forces breached the outer defenses, Rick led a suicide charge that allowed civilian evacuees to escape through maintenance tunnels. His final action was to detonate the complex's power plant, creating an explosion that collapsed several city blocks and trapped an entire alien battalion underground. "We don't fight to win battles," Rick had told his squad before the final assault. "We fight to make sure they remember us. Every alien that survives this war will tell stories about fighting humans. Those stories will make the next alien army think twice before attacking another human world." The cumulative effect of 6 months of resistance was devastating to hegemony morale and operational capacity. Zefkar's fleet was tied down in a conflict that should have ended in weeks. His forces were suffering casualties at rates unseen in centuries of conquest. Most importantly, word of the human resistance was spreading to other worlds within the hegemony empire. Intelligence reports indicated that subject populations on 17 different worlds had begun their own resistance movements, inspired by human broadcasts and seeking to emulate human tactics. The very foundation of hegemony power, built on the assumption that resistance was futile, was beginning to crack. Commander Zefkar found himself facing a choice that no hegemony officer had confronted in living memory. He could continue the occupation, accepting ever-increasing casualties for ever-diminishing control. Or he could recommend withdrawal, admitting that the mighty Third Fleet had been defeated by a species that had barely achieved interstellar flight. Either choice would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what was possible when a determined population refused to accept conquest. The turning point in the war came when the humans stopped trying to defend Earth and started attacking hegemony positions throughout the solar system. Commander Zefkar received the first reports with disbelief. Human forces had launched coordinated strikes against 3 orbital stations simultaneously, using tactics that showed they had learned everything about hegemony military doctrine. Dr. Kevin Walsh had spent 8 months studying captured alien technology. His makeshift laboratory in the ruins of Denver had become the center of human technological advancement. Working with salvaged components and brilliant improvisation, his team had achieved what should have been impossible. "We've cracked their shield harmonics," Kevin announced to the Resistance leadership during a secure video conference. "Better than that, we've found ways to improve their design. Human shields will be more efficient and more durable than the originals." The breakthrough had come from understanding how human and alien technologies could work together. Where the hegemony had developed their systems to work in isolation, humans instinctively looked for ways to combine different approaches. Their shields used alien energy matrices powered by human fusion reactors, creating hybrid systems that performed better than either technology alone. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Rodriguez had used the months of guerrilla warfare to build a proper military force in the asteroid belt. Her original group of 300 miners and engineers had grown into a fleet of 2,000 fighters operating from dozens of hidden bases. They had captured enough alien equipment to outfit themselves with weapons that could threaten even hegemony capital ships. "Today we stop running and start hunting," Amy told her commanders as they prepared for the first major counteroffensive. "The aliens think they control this system because they hold Earth's orbit. Time to show them that space belongs to whoever can fight for it." The human assault began at 06:00 Standard Time. 3 separate strike forces, each consisting of converted civilian vessels and captured alien ships, attacked hegemony installations across the outer system. The aliens had never faced coordinated attacks from multiple directions, and their response was confused and ineffective. Captain Maria Santos led the assault on the hegemony fuel depot near Jupiter. Her raiders had spent weeks studying the facilities, defenses, learning patrol patterns, and identifying weak points. When they struck, it was with precision that shocked the alien defenders. "Primary shields are down," reported her weapons officer as modified mining charges detonated against the station's shield generators. Secondary explosions in the fuel storage areas. "The whole facility is breaking apart." The destruction of the fuel depot meant that hegemony ships could no longer refuel in the outer system. They would have to return to their fleet carriers near Earth, reducing their operational range and making them predictable targets for future attacks. Similar victories occurred throughout the solar system. Human forces destroyed communication relays, supply depots, and repair facilities. Each success demonstrated that they had learned not just to copy alien technology, but to use it more effectively than its original creators. The psychological impact was even greater than the material damage. For the first time since the invasion began, hegemony forces were being hunted rather than hunting. Alien patrols that had terrorized human settlements now found themselves checking empty space for signs of human raiders. Commander Krulthan, whose scout ship had been damaged in the first encounter with humans, led a squadron to investigate the Jupiter attack. What he found changed his understanding of the enemy they were fighting. "Sir, the humans didn't just destroy the fuel depot," he reported to Zethkar. "They salvaged everything useful before the attack. Our own weapons, our shield generators, even our communication equipment. They're building a fleet using our technology." This was unprecedented in hegemony military history. Conquered species sometimes captured individual pieces of equipment, but they never had the technical knowledge to maintain and operate complex systems. The humans had not only learned to use alien technology, they had improved it. The evidence was clear in the wreckage of destroyed hegemony ships. Human weapons were penetrating shields that should have been impenetrable. Human shields were deflecting attacks that should have been overwhelming. Most disturbing of all, human tactics showed complete understanding of hegemony weaknesses that had been classified military secrets. Dr. Kevin Walsh's research team had done more than reverse engineer alien technology. They had identified fundamental flaws in hegemony design philosophy, where alien engineers prioritized reliability and standardization. Humans looked for ways to maximize performance and adaptability. Their plasma weapons are incredibly powerful, but they overheat after sustained fire, Kevin explained in a technical briefing broadcast to all human forces. "We've modified ours to use burst cooling systems that allow continuous operation. Their shields are nearly impenetrable, but they drain power at fixed rates. Ours adjust energy consumption based on incoming threats." The human improvements were not just technical. They were tactical and strategic. While hegemony forces fought according to rigid doctrine developed over centuries, humans adapted their methods to each specific situation. They had learned to think like their enemies, then think beyond what their enemies could imagine. Staff Sergeant Rick Cole had become a legend among resistance fighters for his boarding actions against hegemony ships. Using modified alien armor and weapons, his team specialized in close-quarters combat inside enemy vessels. The aliens, accustomed to fighting at long range with energy weapons, were terrified of humans who charged through ship corridors with nothing but determination and improvised tactics. "They fight like wild animals," reported one hegemony officer who had survived an encounter with Rick's team. "They use our own corridors against us, turning every intersection into an ambush point. They move through ship systems like they were born in space. And they never retreat, even when facing overwhelming odds." Rick's boarding actions had a strategic purpose beyond capturing ships. Every successful assault provided intelligence about hegemony fleet dispositions, communication codes, and tactical plans. The humans were building a complete picture of alien military operations that allowed them to predict and counter enemy movements. The breakthrough that changed everything came when human forces captured a hegemony command ship intact. The vessel's computers contained detailed information about the entire Third Fleet, including weaknesses that could be exploited in a major engagement. Commander Helen Brooks, still coordinating psychological warfare from her Antarctic base, immediately recognized the intelligence value. Her team began broadcasting selected information to resistance cells throughout the solar system, coordinating the largest human military operation since the invasion began. This is our chance to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity, Helen announced in a secure transmission to all resistance leaders. Every alien ship has a weakness. Every alien tactic has a counter. We know their fleet better than they know it themselves. The coordinated assault that followed lasted 72 hours and involved every human military unit in the solar system. Ground-based forces launched salvos of modified missiles at orbital targets. Asteroid belt raiders struck at supply lines and communication networks. The remaining space-based fleet attacked the main hegemony formation in Earth orbit. The battle was not won through superior firepower. The humans were still outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with complete knowledge of enemy capabilities and perfect coordination between widely separated units. Every attack was precisely timed to support the others, creating a symphony of destruction that overwhelmed hegemony defenses. Zethkar watched his fleet disintegrate around him as human forces exploited every weakness his ships possessed. Plasma weapons overheated and shut down when targeted by human electronic warfare systems. Shield generators failed when hit by precisely calculated energy combinations. Even his most experienced crews made tactical errors when faced with human unpredictability. "Sir, we've lost contact with Squadrons 7, 12, and 15, reported Captain Vexron, his voice showing the first signs of panic Zethkar had ever heard from his tactical officer. "The humans are using our own communication frequencies against us, sending false orders and jamming real ones." The final blow came when human boarding parties, led by Staff Sergeant Rick Cole himself, penetrated the flagship's defenses and captured the main computer core. The humans didn't just want to destroy the hegemony fleet. They wanted to capture it, study it, and use it to carry their war to other star systems. "Commander Zethkar," came Rick's voice over the ship's internal communication system. "This is Staff Sergeant Rick Cole of the Human Resistance. Your ship is under our control. Your crew can surrender and be treated according to human standards of warfare, or they can continue fighting and be destroyed. You have 5 minutes to decide." For the first time in 3 centuries of military service, Commander Zethkar found himself facing a choice between surrender and annihilation. The humans had not just defeated his fleet. They had captured it, turned it against itself, and proven that the hegemony's military superiority was an illusion built on fighting unprepared enemies. The war officially ended when the hegemony high command recalled all remaining forces from the Sol system. Commander Zethkar, now a prisoner aboard his own flagship, watched through the viewports as human ships escorted the retreating alien fleet to the edge of human space. The sight would haunt him for the rest of his life. The humans had not simply defeated the Third Fleet. They had captured most of it intact, along with detailed technical specifications for every weapon system, shield generator, and faster-than-light drive in the hegemony arsenal. More importantly, they had broken the myth of hegemony invincibility that had kept dozens of subject species in line for thousands of years. President Claire Johnson stood in what had once been the United Nations building in New York. The structure had been rebuilt from rubble and alien wreckage, its walls embedded with fragments of destroyed hegemony ships as a reminder of humanity's victory. Around her, representatives from every surviving human settlement prepared to address the galaxy. "We never asked for this war," Claire began, her words broadcast across hundreds of star systems through captured hegemony communication networks. "We were content to explore our own solar system, to build colonies on nearby worlds, to take our place among the peaceful species of the galaxy. But you came to our home with weapons and demands for surrender. The speech was being heard by billions of sentient beings across the galaxy. On worlds where the hegemony had ruled for centuries, subject populations listened in wonder as a species they had never heard of described their successful resistance to the Empire's most powerful fleet. You expected us to bow down like all the others, Claire continued. You thought superior technology would guarantee victory. You believed that destroying our cities would break our will to fight. You were wrong about everything. Dr. Kevin Walsh had spent the year after the fleet battle analyzing captured hegemony technology. His teams had not only reverse-engineered alien systems but had developed improvements that made human versions superior to the originals. The technical specifications were being shared freely with any species willing to stand against hegemony rule. Their weapons are powerful but inefficient, Kevin explained during a technical briefing that was broadcast to resistance movements across the galaxy. Their shields are strong but inflexible. Their ships are fast but predictable. We've learned to build better versions of everything they brought to our system. The human improvements were revolutionary. Where hegemony technology focused on overwhelming force, human designs emphasized adaptability and efficiency. Human ships could outmaneuver alien vessels while using less fuel. Human weapons could penetrate hegemony shields while generating less heat. Human shields could deflect attacks that would destroy alien defenses. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Rodriguez had become the commander of humanity's first interstellar fleet. The ships under her command were a mixture of captured alien vessels and new human designs that incorporated the best of both technologies. Her mission was to carry the war beyond the Sol system, supporting liberation movements on worlds throughout hegemony space. Every species deserves the right to determine its own future, Amy told her crews as they prepared for humanity's first faster-than-light expedition. The hegemony has ruled through fear for too long. Time to show the galaxy what freedom looks like. The first target was Kepler 442b, a world where the native population had been enslaved for over 200 years. Intelligence gathered from captured hegemony computers indicated that the planet's inhabitants had maintained an underground resistance movement. Despite centuries of oppression, human forces would provide the weapons and training needed to turn that resistance into a successful revolution. The liberation of Kepler 442b took less than a week. Hegemony garrison forces, already demoralized by news of the defeat at Earth, offered minimal resistance when faced with human tactics and superior technology. The native population, inspired by human example and armed with human weapons, rose up across the planet simultaneously. The humans fight like the old Stories said we once did, reported Elder Thane, leader of the native resistance, in a message broadcast throughout the galaxy. They remember what it means to be free, and they refuse to let anyone take that freedom away. They have given us back our world and shown us how to keep it. Similar victories followed across hegemony space. On world after world, human advisors helped local populations throw off centuries of alien rule. The humans did not seek to replace the hegemony as galactic rulers. Instead, they offered partnership and protection to any species willing to fight for its own independence. Captain Maria Santos had become humanity's most successful deep space raider. Her fleet of fast attack ships struck at hegemony supply lines and communication networks, disrupting the Empire's ability to coordinate responses to the spreading rebellions. Her tactics, learned during the defense of the Sol system, proved equally effective across interstellar distances. The hegemony's greatest weakness is their reliance on centralized control, Maria explained during a strategy conference with resistance leaders from 12 different worlds. Cut their communication lines, destroy their supply depots, and their local forces become isolated and vulnerable. Every species that joins our cause makes the next liberation easier. The psychological warfare campaign, coordinated by Helen Brooks from her new headquarters on Luna, was equally devastating to hegemony morale. Her broadcasts reached every corner of the empire, carrying messages of hope to oppressed populations and doubt to alien military forces. How many of your ships have been lost fighting species that should have been helpless? Helen's voice asked. During scheduled transmissions to hegemony military frequencies, how many of your friends have died conquering worlds that refuse to stay conquered? How long before your commanders decide that the empire is not worth the cost? The broadcasts were having their intended effect. Desertion rates among hegemony forces reached unprecedented levels as soldiers began to question the wisdom of fighting. An enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each defeat. Some alien units surrendered without fighting when faced with human-trained resistance forces. Staff Sergeant Rip Cole had become the instructor for humanity's elite boarding specialists. His teams trained resistance fighters from dozens of species in the art of ship-to-ship combat, teaching them not just how to fight in enclosed spaces, but how to think like humans when facing superior odds. Fear is their weapon, Rick taught his students during combat training sessions. They want you to believe that resistance is hopeless, that their technology makes victory impossible. But every piece of equipment can break, every tactic can be countered, and every enemy can be defeated if you're willing to pay the price. The students came from worlds across the galaxy, representing species that had been enslaved for generations. Under human instruction, they learned not just combat techniques, but the mental attitude that made humans so difficult to defeat. They learned to see opportunity in disaster, to find strength in desperation, and to never accept that any fight was hopeless. Commander Zethkar, now confined to a human prison on Mars, wrote his final report to whatever remained of hegemony. High Command. The document would become the most widely read military analysis in galactic history, studied by strategists from hundreds of different species. We underestimated everything about humanity, he wrote. Their adaptability, their determination, their ability to learn from defeat and turn it into victory. We thought we were conquering a primitive species. Instead, we woke up something that the galaxy had never seen before. The humans do not fight for territory or resources. They fight for principles that they value more than their own lives. They do not seek to rule other species, but to free them from rulers who demand submission. They have turned our greatest strength, our military technology, into their advantage by making it better than we ever imagined possible. Most dangerous of all, they have given hope to every oppressed population in the galaxy. They have proven that no empire is too powerful to fall, no technology too advanced to overcome, no enemy too strong to defeat. The hegemony ruled through fear, but the humans have taught the galaxy that fear itself can be conquered. The final paragraph of Zethkar's report became the unofficial motto of the growing alliance of free worlds. Fight like a human. Accept no defeat as final. See every setback as a lesson. And never stop believing that freedom is worth any sacrifice. 2 years after the failed invasion of Earth, the hegemony empire had collapsed entirely. Dozens of species had won their independence using human weapons, human tactics, and human inspiration. The galaxy was free for the first time in millennia, and everyone knew who had made that freedom possible. Humanity had not just survived their first contact with a hostile alien species. They had changed the fundamental nature of galactic civilization, proving that determination and courage could overcome any technological advantage. The nightmare of fighting humans had become the dream of every oppressed species in the galaxy. The war was over, but the human example would inspire resistance movements for generations to come. Across the stars, the phrase "fight like a human" became synonymous with hope, freedom, and the unbreakable spirit that refused to bow down to any tyrant, no matter how powerful they might seem.